Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. And as you can see from the map today, we are having a look at what is happening right now between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, aka Taiwan, the fully independent nation-state of Taiwan. Now look, I know I'm going to get some pushback on that statement, but let's be realistic. Taiwan, the Republic of China, is and has been a fully independent nation-state separate of the People's Republic of China for a very long time. One would argue that the Republic of China, aka Taiwan, has existed longer than the People's Republic of China. So would one say that, in all possibility, the Republic of China, aka Taiwan, has a rightful claim on the mainland of the People's Republic of China? Well, I know I just tapped into a hornet's nest a little bit there, so I will let you, the viewers, debate that question. But again, you could argue that fact that indeed Taiwan has existed longer than the People's Republic of China. And again, let's just face the facts. Taiwan acts and operates like a fully independent nation state. It has its own currency. It has its own military. It creates its own laws. And right now, in terms of capability for the People's Republic of China to assert a operational conquest of Taiwan is something right now the PRC can't do at this point, right now. So what is happening right now and what has caused this new military activity by the People's Liberation Army to practice blockade operations against Taiwan? What has happened? Well, the United States has committed a massive arms package to Taiwan. Now look, you have a couple of different things going on right now. You have incredibly high tensions between China, the People's Republic of China, and Japan, because Japan is stating that, well, look, if you attack Taiwan, there's a very good possibility we would come to the aid of Taiwan. So China, the People's Republic of China, could find itself in a conflict in which it is not just fighting the fully independent nation state of Taiwan. It could find itself fighting the United States of America and Japan. That would be a tough road for the PLA. The PLA would like the United States to simply pull back, stay out of it. Japan, pull back, stay out of it. And then eventually find a way to make Taiwan acquiesce and give up independence, kind of like what happened with Hong Kong. But Hong Kong and Taiwan are two very, very, very much different situations. Hong Kong is Hong Kong. Taiwan is a much, much bigger challenge, especially if you look at it from the military domain. Now, what is the United States getting ready to send to Taiwan in terms of military aid? Well, it's going to be a total package worth between $10 and $11 billion. Now, I think if we look at what has been given to the Ukraine, obviously that could be construed as a drop in the bucket. But given the military systems that are being talked about that will be handed over to Taiwan, these are some very capable systems that will give the Chinese incredible difficulties, especially in terms of landing operations, in terms of amphibious warfare operations against mainland Taiwan, and then obviously Pingao. This island area here will be crucial for the Chinese to seize control of, as it will give it a staging area to eventually operate against the main island. So what are the weapon systems that are going to give the Chinese fits in this weapons package? Well, first and foremost, the main systems that are going to and are causing the Chinese to be very much disturbed by these inbound weapon systems, and that is the HIMARS. The United States is going to deliver 82 HIMARS systems to Taiwan. And then compounding that, the actual precision-guided rockets that will be handed over to Taiwan are going to be the ATACMS. So let's jump up here to our handy-dandy picture here of the HIMARS system. You have the multiple launch rocket systems, which fires essentially the HIMARS precision-guided rockets and the various forms of rockets that are available to the system. And then you have the wheeled HIMARS systems here that are being handed over to Taiwan. And specifically, these systems here, these ATACMS, these are the larger ballistic missile systems that Taiwan is going to get its hands on. Now, some say that, well, China will have the ability to shut down GPS, and through the use of electronic warfare, much like we're seeing in terms of the Russians using its very advanced electronic warfare capability against the Ukrainians, making these systems not as effective. Not as effective. Are they still effective? Absolutely. We have seen documented video footage of Ukrainian HIMARS systems hitting Russian positions and Russian weapon systems and command and control nodes and points of interest very effectively with these systems. Now, how would Taiwan use these 84 HIMARS in conjunction with the 400 plus ATACMS systems that are going to be handed over? Could Taiwan attack staging areas on mainland China? Possibly. Now, China would have the capability to, through the use of electronic warfare and attempting to block GPS signals, they could make those systems somewhat ineffective, especially if they're attacking mainland China. But in all likelihood, Taiwan would use these systems in a pure defensive role, especially if they were finding it difficult to target areas on the mainland. If they fired ATACMS towards a target, let's say an amphibious warfare ship in port, and it missed that target, then obviously you would have to wonder if Taiwan would continue to attack those targets on mainland China if China was able to negate that system through electronic warfare. Where it will be more challenging for China, the People's Republic of China, to utilize electronic warfare and GPS blocking systems would be if Taiwan, or I'm sorry, if the People's Republic of China, the People's Liberation Army, was attempting landing operations, or in fact had secured a port facility to offload troops and equipment. This is where the weapon system, the HIMARS systems, would become very effective. Look, if you look at the central highlands of Taiwan, it is rugged, mountainous terrain, but there are roads that run all through this terrain. And the HIMARS on a elevated terrain, or even operating some of these valleys, would have the ability to launch attacks against People's Liberation Army ships and offloading troops and equipment very effectively. And the ability of the People's Republic of China, the People's Liberation Army, to jam these systems could be much more problematic than the jamming capability that would exist on mainland China. You can also see from the actions by the People's Republic of China in terms of they are absolutely furious over this weapons package, right? So right now, Taiwan has essentially 11 systems, and then they also have a certain amount of the rocket systems as well that have been handed over to Taiwan. You're essentially talking about 8 times more of these HIMARS systems. You're going from 11 to another 80. So Taiwan would have in its possession 90 HIMARS systems. 90 HIMARS systems. Probably twice the number of operational HIMARS systems that the Ukraine has right now, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that to be the case. So these systems, and again, if you look at the response of the People's Liberation Army and the political entity of the Communist Party in China, they are enraged about the deployment of these HIMARS systems. It makes things very difficult for possible amphibious operations. Now, additionally, the United States is also handing over some other fairly advanced systems as well. You're looking at M109, A7 Paladins, howitzers, 155 millimeter type, being handed over. You're looking at, and I believe that number is about 60 of those systems. You're looking at a massive inflow of Javelin and TOW anti-tank guided weapon systems. Again, these systems would be utilized to defend Taiwan beaches, both the mainland and these outer-lying islands as well. These systems would be incredibly effective at engaging amphibious warfare assets coming onto the beaches of Taiwan or the outlying islands as well. You're looking at software and spare parts and refurbishment kits for Harpoon missiles. So again, this is a very large package indeed that is being delivered to Taiwan. Now, also, Taiwan is increasing its defense budget. Taiwan very soon will have a defense budget that will be on par or very close to what you see in Israel, right? Israel, $36 billion, I believe, plus a lot of aid from the United States. Taiwan will be in that $30 to $40 billion in its own spending, plus obviously another $11 billion. So we're pushing $50 billion, right? That Taiwan will be spending on its defense. It will probably, or it is increasing its national defense budget to about 3% of GDP. And if things get really dicey with China, you will probably see that uptick to 5% or even much, much higher in terms of what Taiwan is willing to do and spend to preserve its status as a fully independent nation state, which it is. Additionally, Taiwan is creating its own version of the Israeli Iron Dome. Is it the same as the Iron Dome? Not quite. A little bit different. It's going to be more in lines of defending the island nation against ballistic missiles and drones. Whereas Iron Dome also has that capability of defending against 120 millimeter mortars and long-range artillery and systems of that nature. This will be more of an integrated air defense system to make it very costly for China to operate over Taiwan in terms of gaining air supremacy, air superiority. China will need air supremacy if it has any hope at all to launching an amphibious warfare operation against Taiwan. This Taiwan air defense system that is being created, and Taiwan already has a very robust air defense system that already exists. It has obviously the American Patriot, the PAC-3 and the PAC-2, and it has its own indigenous air defense capability that is very, very advanced. You have to understand that the Taiwan economy is a very tech-centered economy. Taiwan is the largest producer of high-quality microprocessors in the world right now. Now, what gives Taiwan that capability in terms of the high-tech industry, it is using that capability to improve its arms industry. We are looking at drone systems. Drone systems that, in all probability, as Taiwan continues to prepare for the eventuality of conflict, are going to be much more advanced than even the drone systems that we see, or the rudimentary drone systems we see being deployed by the Ukrainians. You see the Ukrainians using these semi-subsurface and surface-based drones to attack Russian ships. The Republic of China, Taiwan, will have the ability to create and deploy higher quality waterborne, surface-based, and subsurface-based drone systems than what you're seeing right now being deployed by the Ukrainians. They have greater technology. Now, do they have the operational experience that the Ukrainians have? No, they don't. But that will come with conflict. That will happen. But the basis for a high-tech defense industry that exceeds anything like the Ukrainians were doing prior to the conflict definitely exists. Now, look, they're going to be fighting in terms of China, the People's Republic of China, a more advanced nation state in terms of the ability to utilize treasure and funding and its existing military and the size and scope of its existing military. China right now, outside of subsurface submarine warfare and nuclear capability, China is ahead of the Russian Federation, especially in terms of stealth capability, the size and scope of its air force, its cruise missile capability, its hypersonic weapon systems. I don't think anyone would argue that China is ahead of the Russian Federation. In some cases, they may be ahead of the United States in terms of what we see in terms of open source and maybe some non-open source stuff. Difficult to say at this point. Other than subsurface, I would say both the Russian Federation and the United States are pretty far ahead of the People's Republic of China in terms of subsurface warfare. Both of those nation states, the Russian Federation, USA, definitely way ahead of the People's Liberation Navy in terms of that capability. Now, surface warfare, in terms of masses of ships and some of the technology they've started deploying, one would say could maybe not operationally rival the United States, but technologically rival the United States in some cases. Again, there's a lot of systems that the United States deploys that are non-open source that the general public simply does not really know the full extent of U.S. capability, and that will remain hidden until it's not. Now, what is the People's Republic of China? What is the PLA doing right now? Well, they're practicing blockade operations. Why are they practicing blockade operations? Well, in all probability, it is reasonable to say that the People's Liberation Army does not believe that it could militarily conquer Taiwan through amphibious warfare operations. At this point, I think it's safe to say that given the current status quo in terms of the current capability of Taiwan and the near-term future capability of Taiwan in terms of future-facing arms packages that are going to soon be delivered to Taiwan, I think it's safe to say that the PLA does not reasonably believe that it can conquer and conduct a successful amphibious operation followed by a followed-on ground campaign to seize control of the entire island of Taiwan. And I've talked about this before. This future-facing operation by the PLA will be much more difficult than even what was seen during the D-Day landings during World War II. Just in terms of technology, in terms of force concentration in Taiwan, incredibly difficult for the PLA to launch such an operation. Now, compounding that, the Pentagon, the War Department has just issued its new report on Chinese military power and military capability. What's interesting is we have not really started to see the ramp up in terms of short-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles that would be required of China to conduct large-scale saturation attacks against Taiwan. That has not yet started. There is an immense capability. China does have an immense capability that could cause Taiwan definite problems. But as we have seen from the scale and use of drones and ballistic missiles that are being used in the Russian Federation, Ukrainian NATO conflict, in all probability, the Chinese are going to need many more ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones than they currently possess. Now, is it possible that the Chinese are building these systems in secret and in all probability have more than what is being reported by the Pentagon? Possibly. But there's also a pretty good thought process that they're not making as many as they need. And that is why we are seeing these current training exercises by the People's Liberation Army to conduct blockade operations. It would appear that the route that the PLA is moving towards, the political decision that has been made, is to attempt a blockade. A decapitation strike degrade its meaning Taiwan's military, and then conduct blockade operations with the possible end game of seizing Pengao and some outlying islands such as Kinmen and some of those other areas closer to the Chinese mainland. That looks like right now the Chinese go-to strategy if war were to break out, if a direct military conflict were to break out. But again, this arms package that is being sent to Taiwan in conjunction with the uptick in Taiwan defense spending, it is going to make any form of PLA amphibious operation against Taiwan's main island almost impossible. Almost impossible. Very, very difficult. Again, so difficult, in fact, that there's a very high percentage of a chance that the PLA could be defeated on the beaches of Taiwan. So again, a war of conquest by the Chinese to conquer Taiwan is a multi-stage process. This is not we're not going to wake up one morning and read that Taiwan has been occupied by the Chinese. That is not going to happen. What will happen is, first, we will hear about a buildup, a very large and massive buildup that will probably take the better part of a year. At the same time, you'll see the defense industry of China start to ramp up and produce these weapon systems, cruise missiles, drones, ballistic missiles, that are going to be required for said military operation. We're going to see the use of China's merchant ro-ro ships, right? We're going to see those be inducted into military service. We're going to see training operations take place with those vessels being moved into military service. Right now, China just doesn't have the capability to transport the combat maneuver brigades that are going to be needed to conquer Taiwan. It's going to need a lot more than what it currently possesses in terms of military capability, in terms of amphibious warfare via shipping, being naval vessels. Not necessarily warfighting vessels, but the ability to move large amounts of manpower and equipment from mainland China to the beaches of Taiwan. So there's that, right? We will see that. We will fully understand, okay, they're getting ready. They're building a capability, a true capability, not just military exercises, but they're building a true military capability to try and conduct a military campaign to conquer Taiwan. So we're going to see that. We're going to know that. And Taiwan's going to know that. And Taiwan's going to be able to then prepare because it sees this happening. Next is the air campaign. China will have to win air dominance and air supremacy over Taiwan. That is not a guaranteed proposition as of yet. It's something right now that China, I think, reasonably believes they could do, but it will be challenging. And it'll be a learning process because of the capability that exists on the island nation of Taiwan. And it is a very robust, integrated air defense network that is going to become stronger, especially when Taiwan starts to see the true intent of China, meaning deploying forces and preparing itself for a possible conquest operation, large-scale military amphibious operation against mainland Taiwan. Next will be the People's Republic of China gaining what would essentially be seaborne supremacy around the island nation of Taiwan. Its navy will have to move closer. It'll have to seize control of the straits. It'll have to destroy the Navy of Taiwan, and Taiwan does have a fairly effective Navy. Is it anywhere close of the capability of China? No, not really. But through the use of drones and ground-based anti-ship missiles and its existing Navy and Air Force, it could prove incredibly challenging for China to operate surface vessels along the Straits of Taiwan. Very difficult. And then finally, step 3 is going to be an amphibious operation to seize control of Pengao. Again, as I talked about before, the HIMARS systems, the indigenous systems that Taiwan has, the possibility that the United States will initiate hostilities against China with subsurface capability. The non-open sourced drone systems, subsurface drone systems that Taiwan possesses will make those operations to seize control of Pengao very difficult. China will take, in all probability, extraordinary losses, even in a landing operation, an amphibious warfare operation, to seize these islands. And then finally, if and when Pengao is seized, we will then see the preparatory buildup of Chinese capability in conjunction with a blockade in an attempt to launch an amphibious warfare operation against Taiwan. And therein lies, right now, the probability for success, I would say, is less than 20%. Less than 20%. So very, very difficult proposition for China. And that's why we're seeing the Chinese prepare to try and create an atmosphere of capitulation for Taiwan by initiating a blockade. That appears to be, right now, the game plan. The operational game plan for China is to blockade Taiwan, attempt to seize the localized islands, such as this here. Even seizing this could be difficult for China. You got to understand, China has never conducted a large-scale amphibious operation the likes of which they will be required to do. Never before. Just taking Kinmen will be a challenge for Taiwan. I'm sorry, for the People's Republic of China, for the People's Liberation Army. The seizure of Pengao will be an exceedingly difficult operation for the People's Liberation Army. Very difficult operation. And then finally, again, an amphibious warfare operation against the main island of Taiwan, almost impossible at this point. Very, very difficult. We're going to see a buildup unlike anything since the D-Day landings. That will be required by China. And the whole world is going to see this and understand what China is preparing to do. And then it's difficult to say is how the world responds. How does Japan respond? How does the United States respond? Because there are going to be counter moves by Taiwan to try and prevent this from happening. So again, right now, it's safe to say that the main operational goal of China right now is to simply blockade Taiwan. That is what it's planning for. Now, will that be successful? It's difficult to say. It really is. Again, Taiwan is an incredibly advanced nation state that has capabilities to make military operations against it, and especially in terms of the Chinese essentially blockading the chip sector to the United States would, in all probability, cause the United States to then start military operations against China. Now, I believe those are going to be stair-step operations. We're not going to see U.S. B-2s launching precision strikes against mainland China. I don't think it would look like that. I think it would be incremental, and I think it would start with subsurface capability. I think it would start with capability that could be through the use of plausible deniability. The United States would say, well, a ship was sunk. Could have been Taiwan. It could have been a Taiwan undersea drone that did that. We cannot confirm nor deny the use of U.S. forces right now against China. But again, that would come through the use of subsurface warfare capability. Virginia-class, Los Angeles-class nuclear attack subs. Again, that capability far exceeds the current capability of the People's Republic of China. And right now, if you look at some of the systems, the weapon systems that have been shipped over to Taiwan, Taiwan has the Mark 48 torpedo advance, the Mark 48 advance. They have the Harpoon. They have systems that would emulate a U.S. strike against a Chinese surface vessel. Again, plausible deniability. Could have been Taiwan, could have been the United States. But again, this will be a stair-step process and escalation. What does the United States need to do to end the blockade and cause enough casualties against China, the People's Republic of China, that it then understands that its blockade against Taiwan, and for that matter, an amphibious operation against Taiwan, will simply not be successful. And then we can go back to maybe the status quo. I think ultimately this game is going to end with Taiwan declaring full independence, which it is a fully independent nation state. I know we tiptoe around, and the mainstream media loves to pretend that it's what do they call that? One nation, two systems. That's BS. Taiwan is Taiwan. It is a independent, fully independent nation state, completely separate from its communist, Wild West capitalist neighbor. Just is. And that is simply a fact. A fact that cannot be argued against. It is not one nation and two systems. Taiwan, China, are you listening to me? Taiwan is fully independent. You can pretend that's not the case, but China, Taiwan, is not beholden to you. Well, look, that wraps it up for today. As always, thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. Good day.